Hi there. We are getting together today on June 1st to have our Getting Ready for Camp YouTube live stream recording. If you are joining me today, I really want to thank you for your patience. If you missed our Zoom call last night, we did have some issues together today on June 1st to have our Getting The issue last night was that our sound did not work on YouTube. So I've just muted YouTube. I can hear that it is working, but I think I have not muted it on your end. So I'm just going to double check our sound really quick and make sure that the stream is coming through, and we'll get right into our healthcare update for this summer. My name is Lily Mercoliano-Easton. Again, I'm happy that you're here. We are going to go over some announcements for this summer, review some really important reminders, and also discuss some tips for helping campers get ready for camp and supporting them before they leave for camp and also once they're at camp. If you have questions, I'm going to go over my contact information. Hopefully you have gotten an email from me. If you haven't, I'm going to share the information, and we'll be really happy to connect in the next few weeks and look forward to hearing from you. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we are going to jump right into it. All right. So it is now June 1st, not May 31st. And I again appreciate everybody's patience. So I'll do some introductions, give you a sense of some of the key folks that you can connect with at camp. If you do have any questions or concerns, and especially if you've had any difficulty with your camper account access or getting your required forms uploaded, it is urgent that we help you out and get things figured out. And if anything changes or you have concerns in the future, I'm going to make sure that you can come away just knowing how to get in touch with me and some of the other folks on staff that are going to be able to support your camper this summer. We are going to talk some about our infectious disease management, including our updates around COVID, and then talk about supporting campers. Just a little introduction about the camp. Hopefully everybody knows that we're a nonprofit camp. We are a volunteer-led organization. We've been around for over 100 years. Our camp is quite rustic, so I love to just give a little illustration with this photo of the ways that that camp is really secluded out in nature. And also, just as a touch point, you'll get to see some of the buildings as we go through. If you haven't visited yet, I'll share some information on how you can come out to camp ahead of time. But we do want to give some consideration into how to help campers just make that transition from home to having a good time at camp. For all of our campers, home and camp is quite different, and camp is just an amazing place for them to grow, and we want to make sure we're giving them the support to be able to do that as best as possible. Like I said, my name is Lily Mercoliano-Easton. I'm the executive camp director. That is a slight new title for me. Really doesn't change anything in terms of the summer when it comes to my role as camp director at camp. But I have been in an executive level position for 10 years now, and the title change is just reflecting the ways that I continue to work with the board of our organization and just think about our overall trajectory and growth as a camp. Nella Stoltz is our healthcare supervisor. She's been with us for 10 years. She's an incredible pediatric nurse. And again, I'm happy to connect you to her, and I'll provide some information about that if you'd like to speak to her directly ahead of camp. Courtney Buxton will be back this summer. She's our healthcare assistant. She's been with us. This will be her 8th summer. And then Annie O'Kitchie, among some other program leaders. Annie is our program director. This will be her 7th summer. So I'm excited about the team we have. And you'll get to meet some of these folks in the next month or so. A few just reminders as we think about where we're at in terms of our calendar for getting ready to go to camp. If you're having trouble logging into your camper account, please make sure that you're using the unique link for our camp with UltraCamp, and that you're not just Googling UltraCamp, because that can take you to an admin login, which is not going to work. You can definitely be in touch with me if you have any questions about that login. If you're not receiving emails from us, anything like that, I'd really like to help. We do have a packing list. It should be in your welcome to camp email. It's also able to be accessed within your login from Ultra Camp, or I can send it to you directly if you haven't gotten it. I do want to give just a little reminder, teen campers and CITs, this is new for this year. We'd like those groups to really make sure they focus on comfortable walking shoes. We have not been able to go on the Appalachian Trail for extended hikes the last few years because of COVID. We're so excited to bring it back. We know that our CITs missed out on that. We're still working on the scheduling of when they might go in July, but we want to make sure everybody's equipped. We do have a Guardian handbook. So if you haven't looked at that online, that also got sent to you. It's available there. And I particularly recommend looking at page 7 with your camper. So page 7 is our individual rights and dignity policy. It's a great way to all get on the same page about the responsibilities for all of our participants, the rights that all of our participants have, and how to make sure that everybody is getting the right support and space and other things provided for them while they're at camp. Just a reminder about drop-off and pickup. Drop-off is on Sundays, pickup is on Fridays. Both days are now from 2 to 4 p.m. So we've lined that up so that it matches. You can come at any time in that window. For the Friday pickup, we will do a little closing ceremony it'll be prompt at about 2, maybe 2:15. So if you come at the very beginning, you'll get to be a part of that. We will have some snacks during pickup, encourage families to come down to base camp. So that's a change. If you're returning, we'll provide direction for you to come down. Drop off is really going to stay the same. So I'll talk a little bit more. Our testing protocol is changing. So drop off will happen even faster than it has the last couple of summers. But drop off is drive through. It's up on our big field. You'll be provided direction when you get there. Again, you can come anytime between 2 and 4. You may have to wait behind a few cars. We are able to accommodate groups that come all at once and move it through pretty quickly. You'll get to meet Nella. You'll get to meet your counselor, take pictures, give hugs, ask any final questions you have. It's really, it's a good, smooth way that we've been doing it the last couple of years, and that'll happen for drop off and then pick up. You'll park on that same field, but we'll actually ask that you come down into base camp so that you can get a sense of camp, have the option to do an activity, and get to pick your camper up there. A few optional things coming up as you think about preparing. Teens and CITs are recommended to bring 2 water bottles, a lightweight sleeping bag, and a hiking backpack with an internal frame. And those additional items are if possible. I actually don't recommend that our teens or our CITs like invest in new equipment for hiking unless it's something that they already know that they really love and they're going to use outside of camp. We do have some supplies at camp, and we'll be able to support the whole group. But if someone in your family already has these items, or it's easy to loan, or it's already something your family does and your camper has these things, then bringing them out is ideal. You do have the option to add camp insurance to your camp session. We're going to talk a bit later about our infectious disease management. And we as a camp don't profit at all from the camp insurance. So I add it as a note because it can be a benefit to families in the event that your camper gets sick before camp or during camp. And then we do have one more option to come out to camp, June 10th and 11th. That's not this weekend, but the next weekend. You're welcome to come out and have a tour. If you'd like to come volunteer, we'll still have projects going on. Camp will be totally set up. And so it's a great opportunity to see what camp is like. Not required, but I do recommend it. And then the last thing, I'm putting this at the beginning, I'm going to talk about it later. It's my favorite talking point for this summer. Please, as you're considering packing, we'll talk about it a little bit more in this presentation, but just 2 important takeaways. Please have campers leave slide sandals at home. Camp is not a place for slide sandals. That's really not beneficial to campers' ankles. And we have just too many bumpy paths and all the things. We do recommend shower shoes. And for that, I just recommend like really cheap dollar store, Target, whatever, like cheap flip-flops or something like that. But the slides should stay home. And then also phones should not come to camp. And if you have any questions about packing, you can be in touch. Just a final reminder to all of our families that our forms, you have a list of tasks in your camper account. Those forms are required. There's no exceptions. We have the camper health history, the concussion questionnaire, the asthma questionnaire, medication authorization, camper insurance card, annual physical form, and immunization record. They all have to be complete. And then we'll also ask that you upload a home COVID test in the little test window the day before camp. These are requirements from our Department of Health. We can't make exceptions to them. There are some individual modifications that are made. For example, if your camper doesn't have asthma, you need to note that manually in the little window where it says like what type of asthma or how severe is your camper's asthma. You can say doesn't have asthma and then finish the form. We are trying to make that a little bit more user-friendly for our families that don't have campers with asthma. But the emphasis there is that if your camper does have asthma, it's really important that we're getting a really full profile, even if it's not something that presents regularly. If your camper doesn't have medication, you can leave the medication authorization blank. But if your camper does have any prescription medication that they're bringing to camp, that has to be completed by a doctor. So it is really important that that request has been put into your doctor. It has to be signed by them. And so some doctors' offices are going to make you wait sometimes as much as 2 weeks. So make sure that that's something that you've already put in the request for and you're not waiting. Your camper will not be able to be at camp without that medication authorization. Same for an insurance card. And then the camper health history, we really do ask that you're complete with it. If you have any questions, you want to add additional notes, you can be in touch with me or Nella. So we're going to talk some now about infectious disease management at camp. In the past, we focused very heavily on COVID. We really have learned a lot in the last 2 years about how to improve our response in general to any type of virus at camp. So I want to broaden it a bit today, but I will talk about some COVID-specific protocols that we will still have in place. If you have joined one of these talks before, you've maybe seen this image that I have on here at the top. This is called the Swiss cheese method for infectious disease management. And basically this concept, which has been really widely adopted by camps throughout the pandemic, and it precedes any type of COVID response. But the general concept here is that we're really thinking about how do we put in more than one layer, and knowing that no layer of protection when it comes to infectious disease can make anything perfect. We are a resident camp. We're going to be living communally. We know that our participants all have the possibility of being exposed to a variety of different viruses. We do just want to think about the things that we can do best to keep everyone as healthy as possible. So you have the green dots over on the one side, that represents the virus. Then you have these different layers of protection and just ways of thinking about how can we block that spread as we think about putting in these levels of protection until you get to the human that's over there on the side. So first, just want to share some of the general things that we have at camp that are in place when we're thinking holistically about infectious disease, wellness, and just response when we're at camp. So we are licensed by our town health department. We report to the Massachusetts Department of Public Health. This does mean that there's a list of reportable diseases and viruses. So if we have anything from COVID to measles, et cetera, at camp, then we are beholden to the rules in the state when it comes to how we're responding and how we're reporting that. We're also ACA accredited and we follow the guidance of the CDC. So those are two additional agencies that we work with, and just really thinking about what are the best practices that we can put in place to have a safe and healthy summer. To start off with, it's important that communication is happening with our families. So if you do have a camper that's sick before coming to camp or has a known exposure to an infectious disease, please reach out to us. Nella is an experienced nurse. She's been really great in being able to walk through any concerns the last couple of years. And we just want to keep that communication strong going into the summer. So if you have a concern, be in touch with us. We can talk about what's going to be best for your camper. We can talk about whether or not there do need to be adjustments to drop off and things like that. And just don't hesitate to be in touch. And then you'll see Nella at drop off. And if Nella is also not the nurse on duty for that particular session, then you'll also see that individual nurse. You'll have the opportunity to talk to Nella. If you have any new concerns, if your camper has become symptomatic, then you can talk with Nella there at drop off. We have daily communication with our counselors. So your camper is going to stay in a cabin that looks just like this with 6 other campers. There will be 2 counselors. We will be checking in about symptoms. It's really important to prep your camper to talk about if they're not feeling well. If they're, if something is changing, then they can communicate with their counselor and we'll be able to support them from there. We have a nurse on staff every day. We also really have the benefit of being outside a lot, having great ventilation, having numerous different opportunities and ways to sanitize both our facility and then also have frequent hand washing. We do have a health lodge, which I'll talk a little bit more about how we use that in a minute. That's available if a camper is sick, that can provide isolation as necessary. And then we also will always, anytime it comes to concerns around health or wellness, then we really rely on communication with home so that we can figure out the best plan forward. So what happens if the camper gets sick at camp? So the very first thing that's going to happen is the camper is going to be assessed by the nurse or the healthcare assistant. A COVID test will be administered if they're symptomatic. We'll have those rapid tests that we've all, I think, gotten pretty used to on hand. If the camper is negative for COVID, then we have a Care for Sick Camper protocol. That's in your handbook. That's available online or in your inbox. And the gist of it is that we'll contact you. If your camper has a fever, they'll need to isolate for 24 hours until they're fever-free for 24 hours. So that's where we use the health lodge. We also have an urgent care nearby. So we'll be in communication with home if we think that we need to have your camper assessed for any outside assistance or treatment. It is just really important that we keep in touch with you. If you get an initial call that your camper is sick, then we're going to want to keep in touch about the best management. And sometimes for a variety of illnesses or concerns, it is best for a camper to be able to rest at home to recover. And so we'll talk about that and if we're seeing concerns in that way. Now, on the other hand, if your camper tests positive for COVID, regardless of symptoms, then the camper will need to, or I should say, regardless of severity of symptoms, because we would test them because they had some symptoms, but regardless of fever or things like that, then the camper will need to isolate in Heart Lodge. There's different amenities up there. We will not be able to provide the 5 nights of overnight supervision for 5 days of isolation. So the camper will need to get picked up that day. They'll need to go home. And then when it comes to the additional 5 days of masking that would need to happen after the isolation, we're going to need to be in communication about the ability to supervise the camper when they come back in the evenings, when they would need to be unmasked, and then also just your camper's ability to mask and some different things that can come up from a developmental perspective. The other thing that will happen if we do have COVID at camp is we will send an email notification to all of our families. It will be anonymous, so it will just say that a participant or X number of participants has tested positive for COVID. I'll provide a summary of how we're responding, and then I will keep in touch with families if we're managing a COVID outbreak and just keep updates in terms of if we're making any changes to the camp program. A few other very specific COVID notes. We do encourage up-to-date COVID vaccinations. We are asking again this year that everybody test before they come to camp. We did change that from a PCR test just because of some of the changes in terms of accessibility. And then we're just going to ask that you upload a photo of your home tests. If you have a known COVID exposure prior to coming to camp, this is the same as the last 2 years. You should make sure to report that to me. If your camper is not up to date with COVID vaccines, then we will ask for prior approval for them to stay at camp if they're exposed, or if you prefer to pick them up once you get a notification that there is COVID at camp, or if you want to talk with us about what the perceived level of exposure is, depending on if it's someone in their cabin or something like that, then you can contact camp. And then we do have a list of other mitigation methods that we've used in the past that we know can help slow the spread of COVID at camp. And that's having outdoor meals, wearing masks, being in pods, considering if the health department or our healthcare supervisor does recommend exclusion of campers who are not vaccinated, or anything else that the health department might recommend to us. So for this summer, we are going to focus on the home tests and like regular monitoring as our as our primary ways of responding to COVID before camp. But if we do end up with COVID at camp, we'll keep you posted on the need to possibly use some other mitigation methods. So that brings us to thinking about how you can support campers. And just getting ready for camp, the last few years, I mean, things like homesickness, having a transition coming to camp, settling and things like that, always a part of the camp experience. In the last few years, we have noticed that there has been some heightened anxiety around changes. There can be a harder time with separation, and just some things that we want to try to be as proactive as possible, probably things that might be on your mind. I want to be able to provide support. So does Nella. And we hope you'll be in touch if you have very specific concerns, but we'll also talk about some of the general trends that we've seen and some of the things when we look back over positive outcomes, you know, really wanting to think about, so what is it that we're able to do before campers come to camp and when they're actually at camp to help them move through any potential transition hurdles well or challenges and have a really great time at camp. So first and foremost, again, please make sure that campers are packing with you. And or doing the packing themselves, and you're just reviewing to make sure, you know, that they have their sweatshirt or whatever. It is important that campers, to the best, like in whatever way possible, know what is in their luggage, know which towels they've packed, know what their bathing suit looks like. If they've gotten something new, if they've gotten, you know, new shorts or whatever, even if it's all labeled, we want campers to have a sense of what has gone into their luggage. So them taking the lead in packing and being there for the packing is really important. I really want to stress for the summer writing as a positive coping tool for the transition to camp. And then also as just like a great way to celebrate and keep mementos of camp also. So please pack envelopes and postcards and writing tools, you know, whatever things your camper might gravitate towards. So it doesn't have to be one type of any of this. We've seen a huge variety. But I have really noticed in the last 2 years that campers that are able to use postcards, letters to process that first week of camp are really having better success moving through homesickness and having a better second week. So I really encourage writing home. And we'll talk a little bit about what you can do if you get a letter that's upset or you have concerns or things like that, because that definitely happens. And that can be like, you know, maybe one difficult part of writing home a lot. But what we see at camp is campers having that outlet, being able to note if they're having a hard time, sometimes processing, you know, how difficult it can be to connect with home while you're at camp. It's giving that space for process, and then can also help us connect with your camper better at camp. Sometimes we'll provide you with some information that we can then communicate about to get to solutions, and is just helping campers to make that transition better. If you are having concerns before camp, please be in touch with me and Nella. We're both moms of 3 kids, have been at camp for a long time. We both work with youth outside of our camp life. So we can't encourage you enough. Whatever your concern is, please talk with us. You know, we're Resident Sleepaway Summer Camp. We've been doing this for a while. We want to know what concerns you might have, and we want to be able to think about the best care for your camper. When it comes to their personal items, literally label everything. And do think about when you're packing, just ways that you can really prepare your camper as much as possible for the self-care portion of them being out at camp. Because that's one of the biggest transition points often for campers when they're at camp. And also one of the, you know, it's a really great part of camp is the ways that campers can grow in their ability to manage their own care and be supportive of their peers. So a couple of things that can help a lot is to consider ahead of time protective hairstyles, hair products, hair accessories that can help when campers are in a lot of humidity, frequently in the water, you know, running around a lot, and just generally probably not always having maybe as much attention as they might when they're home for that care. And then pack a shower caddy, shower shoes, and soap and hair care products that are familiar. That can just help a camper be able to be able to do the shower portion with as much ease as possible. We do have extra products like toothbrushes, toothpaste, soap, deodorant, usually some hairbrushes, picks, different things like that, cream, at camp in the camp store. So remind your camper ahead of time that they can look for those items in the store. Sometimes campers can get really like focused on our camp store at night will have ice cream or it'll have snacks, but it also has a broader variety of items. So if your camper does lose their toothbrush or something like that, they can mention that at the camp store, and every camper will have a balance open at the camp store, and they can purchase items if they need it to get them through the rest of the time at camp. And then lastly, please do disclose if your camper has specific self-care bathroom or bedwetting patterns at home, or has a more recent history of those things. Is better to disclose those concerns with the healthcare staff. It's not something that's shared staff-wide or anything like that. We are really discreet, but it's helpful on our end if we can have a heads up so that we can be aware of just keeping an eye out for any continuation or recurrence of patterns that we might be able to support at camp so that your camper has a better time at camp. Some very specific packing reminders. First and foremost, especially as we settle into, at least in the Northeast, what is already a heat wave for May, please make sure you're packing for all weather. So that means if it's 90 degrees at home the week before you go to camp, still really important that you pack sweatshirts and a sleeping bag and like the long pants and all the things, because the weather can be quite different at camp. It can change quickly at camp, and the weather can take changes while your camper is at camp. So the packing list has a variety of items requested. Please make sure you're packing for both warm and cold, because we can also have it be quite cold at camp and then have a heat wave a week later. Water bottles are really crucial. We do ask that you send out all bedding for your camper to be comfortable. So a sleeping bag, a pillow, a bottom sheet, those are all really important, even if those are not things that your camper usually uses at home. I am recommending this year as an optional item, bug net. There's a Coughlin simple one that's called a rectangular mosquito net that you can get on Amazon. It's like $12. We'll probably stock some in the store. Our cabins are screened, but we've noticed an increase in mosquitoes the last few years. And actually last year in July, I got my own kids some mosquito nets. And as soon as I did that, I thought, this is maybe something that a lot more kids would really like. So if your kid is more sensitive to mosquito bites, I would just really recommend it for everybody. You can put up a little net, and that will give them an extra level of just peace of mind while they're sleeping at night. We do laundry after a week, so you don't need to pack for 2 weeks. The packing list is going to reflect needs for 1 week. And then lastly, just want to review the items that we ask that you don't pack. So don't pack any food. If your camper does have a special diet and you have concerns about particular meals or particular items or preferences, you can reach out to me and we can talk through that. Our menu will provide food for all special diets, but if there's something in particular, you can drop it off with the nurse if you get prior approval. But otherwise, we can't have any food at camp. We can't store it, and you do not want campers to have it in their cabins, because we do live in the woods and there is like a huge variety of wildlife that will come looking for that food. Don't pack any phones or screen devices. Please don't pack any valuable items. Those slide sandals need to stay home. And the same goes for other shoes without backs, unless it's just those shower shoes. So sandals need to have backs if it's a sandal that your camper is going to want to wear on a regular basis. And then also medication shouldn't be packed anywhere in their luggage, whether it's prescription or not. It has to be in a clear plastic bag, and you're going to hand it to the nurse when you do drop off. We can't have any medication in the cabins. So even something like allergy medicine that's just used as needed, you can put that on their health form. You're going to drop it off with the nurse, and during med calls or at another time, your camper can request that their counselor talk to the nurse or can talk directly to the nurse and still access anything you send, but we do still need to keep it secured. It can't be in their luggage. Then obviously no firearms or weapons, and no controlled substances should be in the packing. Then we'll have campers at camp. Very, very fun time. If you have any questions about the program, the different types of things that we do at camp, I hope that you'll reach out. There are some great ways that you can support campers while they're at camp, just to have a really good time. So sending letters regularly is something that I highly, highly recommend for all families to do for all of your campers. That includes our teenagers, that includes the camper that you think won't care if you send them mail. I'm the one who gets to see their faces, and so do some of the other leadership staff when they get mail. And it's a great part of the day. We do mail pickup every single day. If you have any concerns about being able to send mail on a regular basis, you can drop us off a stack of letters. So if you want to just do that along with when you pass in your meds, that's fine. Many families do that. You can number the letters. We'll, pass the letters out on day 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. You can also drop off a package. We'll give the package at a certain time during camp. It just can't have any food in it. Our address is here on the screen. We have a PO box. That's where you should send it. That's also in your guardian handbook. And I would just say, I usually recommend that, and I'll send out an email reminder that you don't send mail after Tuesday of the second week. There is a delay in the mail getting out there. So if you send mail later, and particularly remind people who don't get emails from me. So sometimes grandparents or extended relatives or different folks send mail later in the session, and then it won't get to your camper before they go home. If you do have concerns, you get a letter back, that's really emotional or shares any alarming information, you can contact me, and I really request that you do that. So you can call camp, and the phone number will be at the end of this presentation, or you can email me. And if homesickness does come up, which is somewhat common, whether it's coming up in the mail and you're writing a camper back, or we do determine that we need to have a phone call, I just want to have you keep in mind a couple things that can be really helpful. The first is, it's really helpful when parents are enthusiastic about what their camper is doing. So you can acknowledge whatever is the hardship, and try to focus some enthusiasm on what it is that they're trying to get through, the activities that they are enjoying, maybe new friends that they're making, connections with counselors, things like that. If you do have a phone call with a camper, I suggest that you really listen to them, hear whatever concerns or emotions they're having. You'll get to talk to staff. So I would encourage you to avoid making changes right in that moment. But we can talk a little bit and really see what's going to be able to be best to help the camper be successful. I do suggest that you avoid bribing campers or scolding them or getting upset with them if we are in touch over homesickness. Then please keep in touch with us. And the last thing that can help a lot with success is just trusting that your camper's experience can change, and that our communication and some time can be a good way for us to figure out the best way to move forward. If you have questions about any of these things, please connect with me. There is not a question that you will ask that will be like annoying, too much, anything like that. Please be in touch. You can email me. I'm happy to schedule a phone call. I'm happy to connect you with Nella if you'd like to have a call directly with the camp nurse. And if it is the summertime, you should call 413-229-9110. So I'll be moving out to camp in 3 weeks. And once I'm at camp, phone is going to be the fastest way to reach me. And in the summer, that's also the fastest way to reach Nella or a camp nurse or Courtney. So we look forward to hearing from you. We're so excited for camp this summer. I appreciate your time. If you want to reach out with questions during this live, you can definitely do that. If you want to leave a comment that you'd like us to reach out to you, just leave a comment with your name. And if you are not the primary on the account, then please do just make sure to mention, how to best get in touch with you. But we look forward to hearing from you. We're really looking forward to camp. Hopefully we'll see you soon, and hope you have a really great day, and happy June. Take care, everybody.